You remember when I said one of my biggest worries about Nolan's Odyssey was this right here? What they're doing now with the Odyssey is taking the last big thing that they can fire, the last big shield. They are taking Christopher Nolan's name and the audience connection to him to try to push this in and save it one last time. All the cynicism, all the ideology, all of the agenda, all the deconstructing and demystifying our heroes, all putting the Mary Sues and the feminism over the top of it. They are using Nolan and his success as a shield to try to say, see, this will actually work, while they're guarding it over here, because the truth is, again and again, it has proved to be a failure. Well, it turns out, unfortunately, I was exactly right, because over the course of several videos leading up to the Odyssey and my review, but before the Odyssey review, before I actually saw it, I said I was worried this was going to send the wrong message, and that is why the movie needed to fail to recoup its budget. It needed to send a signal, and it needed to send the correct signal. And I hope it fails, and I honestly think we'll be better off, and movies in Hollywood will be better off if this fails. Sorry, Nolan bros, that is just how it is. That my hope. I have hope. I hope that this does not succeed on a grand scale, because it will send the wrong message. As a matter of fact, I made a few predictions. I made a few things over that time, and I've had some people say, oh, you were wrong about the Odyssey not opening. I always said that it was going to open well because they sold tickets so far in advance. They sold out tickets so far in advance of the actual casting and the casting announcements of who was going to play which roles, that they protected that first weekend, the first week of this movie, by selling those ahead of time. And I think secretly they knew that. That's why they put these pre-sales on available so far in advance, before any big announcements about cast and who was playing whom and all of that. And they tried to safely bank that first weekend to artificially manipulate the outcome. And that's exactly what happened. You had all the IMAXs full. And then if you went outside of IMAX, not so much, because we walked up the day of and bought tickets to a large format screen without a problem. And I live in one of the biggest counties in the country. Okay. So it wasn't that hard to get into. And the regular screenings haven't been hard to get into either. And they are really kind of, I'm not going to say they're cooking the books on this, but there is definitely some miscalculations and some sort of half-truths and sort of overlooking a few things here. But the biggest thing is, I said if this movie does well, if it goes on to make over $1 billion, my worry is it was going to send the wrong message, that they were using Nolan's name and his fans and his stans and the Nolan bros and all of his history, all the goodwill that he has built up as a shield. Just like I showed you in the beginning, I said they were going to use it as a shield to say, see, all of the ideology, first storytelling, all of that kind of stuff, we can cram it into a movie and they're going to be successful. There's no such thing as go woke, go broke. And that they were going to ignore the evidence of their eyes and their ears. That was the first commandment, right? If you read 1984, ignore the evidence of your eyes and your ears. They were going to ignore the countless flops, including films that they've heavily awarded, like One Battle After Another that lost over $100 million at the theater. They were going to ignore everything that happened with Supergirl. They were going to ignore all of these countless flops. And the other side of the coin, movies like Project Hail Mary, Michael, things like that, like Mario Galaxy, Sheep Detectives, these movies that went above and beyond our obsession, things like that went above and beyond without any of that messaging. They were going to ignore all of these. Top Gun Maverick, going all the way back then, and they were going to say, see, here's one that we had. This is one. It proves you're all wrong. It proves everyone who had a dissenting opinion is a chud or an incel or whatever these made up names are that they want to call people who are just trying to have a discussion and point out things that are hypocritical and things that are historically inaccurate and jarring and all of that. They were going to ignore all that. And a lot of you were like, oh, they're not going to do that. They're not going to do that. And I said, I did a whole essay on heroes and how Hollywood deconstructs the heroes, and they don't want you to believe that a hero can be flawed but good and all these things. They want to deconstruct them and make them miserable and say, see what's wrong with them. And they did that exact same thing with Odysseus. And I said all that before it happened. And then immediately we get an article, and I'm going to share it up here, but I have it over here. The first headline, and this is just one of many just like it. The Odyssey's epic box office haul breaks the go woke, go broke myth. That's what it says. It breaks the go woke, go broke myth. One movie, forget the countless movies over the last 10 years that have gone broke. Let's forget the ones that don't have any agenda first, that are succeeding. Let's point to this one, which, by the way, didn't even open as strong as James Gunn's Superman. So, just saying. And that movie went on to lose $100 million, by the way. But here you go. You have all of these things where it proves the Odyssey is dominant, that Nolan doesn't need Barbenheimer. He doesn't need anything like that to sell tickets. This is nothing but a handful of trolls who complain. Forget the fact that between two trailers, there's over 1 million dislikes, but it's just a handful of trolls. And this proves that we just need good stories, and things like Ghostbusters 2016 were just financial disappointments because they weren't good stories and because you trolls made them that way. You're the ones who made it bad. It wasn't because it was woke, or it wasn't because it was pushing an ideology. It was just the trolls, and the story wasn't good enough. Really? Really? That's what you're going with out of all of that? The Last Jedi, a similar lightning rod. But it wasn't really a bad movie. It was just the trolls. Come on, man. This is what I was worried about. I sat right here and said, they're going to use Nolan as a shield to try to revive and breathe life to this stuff that's on its way out, that's ruining our heroes, that's ruining our movies, that's hurting the theaters. They're going to use this shield, right? To protect it, this is their last stand. And they're going to say, see. And you're like, oh, they wouldn't do that. Well, here, they are doing it. Vanity Fair is just one of many that are doing it. And it is sad because they're going to use this to, instead of change what they're doing, they're going to try to continue on. They're going to continue failing until nobody goes to the theater, and the theaters are going to die. And they're going to continue deconstructing your heroes based on one faulty assumption and the outlier. This is the exception that proves the rule, and it took the biggest things you could throw at it. It took Christopher Nolan. It took Matt Damon. It took everything you could throw at it to throw that shield up to protect yourself. And I said all of that before it happened. And then when you get to the deconstructing of the heroes and the messaging that runs through this, I mentioned it in my review. They're constantly with the Zeus's law, that you should invite people in and take care of them. There's a very heavy messaging there. There's a very heavy messaging right now when there's political discussions and culture wars over closed borders and protecting and maintaining cultures. There is this huge culture war around that. So they want to say, see, we're going to make this whole book about Zeus's law, right? And we're going to say everyone should have to bring in people and they should have to feed them and take care of them. And the whole downfall of civilization is if you don't do that. And he started the downfall of civilization by breaking Zeus's law. And then we're going to bake in a fear of immigrants by saying the sea people, the sea people, the sea people. Everybody's afraid of the sea people, but they're not, it's nothing really to be afraid of because it was them all along. So it's all just see, you're wrong. You should invite people in. It doesn't matter about your culture. See, we have two guys, we have an African-American and we have an Indian guy insisting to an actual Greek person that they are Greeks from Ithaca in the movie. The messaging can't be more in your face. And then you turn Odysseus. You destroy him. You destroy Athena, gods and heroes, and basically make him a guilt-ridden sad sack who has PTSD, and the one genuine mythic goddess presence that you dare put into the film in any kind of physical form is really revealed to be a PTSD hallucination of Odysseus and his mind superimposing the goddess onto a memory of a Trojan priestess who was beheaded. So she's never really there. It's never really Athena because we can't have gods because gods aren't real. They don't work out here, right? That doesn't work. And if you have faith in a culture, then you're not worldly enough. So we've got to get rid of that and we've got to ground it. So sit with what that actually does for a minute. Homer's goddess of wisdom, the protector of Odysseus, architect of his entire homecoming, written out of the story entirely and replaced as a trauma symptom. We are into heavy deconstruction territory here. This is my hero's video thesis in a miniature. Not the hero is flawed and reluctant and has to overcome. That's always been true. That's good storytelling. But that the sacred thing that about that hero that gets diagnosed and destructed instead of honored. It is basically Athena isn't a character anymore. She is a symptom of a deconstructed hero. And to say it plainly, this isn't subtext hunting. This is like the film's overall reveal here. It is being reported straight to you. And then there is the whole pre-sale thing that is changing the landscape of the first opening weekend, the week of this movie. And to restate that in a simple form, IMAX tickets sold out before the public knew of any of the cultural prejudices or controversies or any of that kind of quotes that's been said out there, who was cast as whom. All of that was done those were sold before that happened in order to protect that time period. That's not an audience endorsing the choices. That's an audience trusting a director's track record and spending on something they haven't seen yet, which again is that shield that they're using of Nolan. It's the shield of Nolan. And now these trade headlines proving what I said was going to happen. If it opens well, that's why I said Hollywood needs it to fail, because otherwise they are going to get the wrong message. Now, it still may not make its money back. I'm not 100% convinced. Maybe it will. Maybe it will. But Spider-Man is coming in a week from today, and it's going to cut some legs off with its 8 legs. And this is exactly what I was saying, though. They are using his name to protect this messaging, and it's now visible in print. You can watch the movie and see it, and then you can go and see the people writing articles to that exact effect. And the kill shot here of this all being protected is the Rotten Tomatoes evidence. And I posted this on my community tab well before anyone else caught on to this, because I wrote a review like the day of for Rotten Tomatoes, and I'm going to try to put it up here. My screenshots, it says that all reviews for this movie are being placed under community watch. They're being placed under community watch, and they basically have an approval gate for verified and unverified reviews alike. So just general audience reviews, they are even screening those. So people are like, oh, they always do this for verified. I'm not talking about just for verified. I'm talking about for all reviews. And then now people have actually gone in, because there are hackers out there in this world. There are people who can get to the back end of your page content And you can see that the actual overall audience score is not 97 or 99, something ridiculous, putting it ahead of like Lord of the Rings and Gone with the Wind and epic movies of all time. It's not that. It's more like a 57 from the general audience. It's down in the 50s for the general audience reviews. And they've blocked that. They've systematically blocked that. And that is, a company protecting itself, because ultimately Rotten Tomatoes is owned by the same company that's put out this movie. So that's a company protecting itself and protecting the message right there. My own review, I gave it like a 5 out of 10. And publicly, and I said that I think you could have a justification for anywhere from a 2.5 to maybe a 6, depending on if you're just a massive Nolan fan and things like that. Anything above that is, you got to justify it a lot more, in my opinion. Anything below that, you got to justify it a whole lot more, in my opinion. So I just think it's sitting there completely mid. It's somewhere between a 3.5 and a 5.5. It's the definition of average is grits. And then, now, if you take it as an adaptation of the story, it's not good at all. You got to just take it as a movie. You can't even take it as an adaptation. And then if you factor in the message, this is the equivalent of putting a medicine in cheese for your dog to try to hide it. That's what they're doing with the messaging in here. That's really, really straightforward. And it's all in there. So if you factor all that in, it continues to go down, which is what you see on Metacritic, which isn't screening things. And Metacritic has it at like a 5.2 out of 10. And that's a completely different picture of the same audience, but much more realistic. And that's sort of the thing here. One platform filtering audience reviews and what they're allowed to say, and the other platform allowing everyone to say their own feelings without it being screened. And the whole numbers and the stats for the whole woke doesn't mean broke articles that everybody's running with off of this one movie, this one example, are being finessed and changed and filtered and controlled. They don't really represent real life. So the 97% isn't the real audience verdict. It's the one that made it through the gate is what happened. So it's not that the film failed. I wanted the film to not recoup, because I think when it does, all of these incorrect messages are going to be reaffirmed to Hollywood, and it's going to set us back years from the progress that we started to make this year. It's going to set us back. And this film isn't in the breath of Project Hail Mary. It just isn't. It's all about despair and being sad and toxic masculinity, to the point that Emily Wilson, the self-professed feminist whose translation this is based off of, said in her review of this that Nolan completely missed the themes of the Odyssey. He completely missed them. That are themes that are still pertinent to the story, even through the modern lens. So he got grilled by the very modernist writer that he tried to adapt for being too much that way, in some cases, to the point where he lost the overall meaning of the character. And toxic masculinity is on trial here all the way through this movie, to the point where, it's like we've brought about the fall of the Bronze Age. Nobody says, literally he says that by him doing the Trojan horse, it broke Zeus's law about treating others the way you want to be treated and accepting them into your home. Well, first of all, this was war. The gods were divided on whose side they were on to start with, so it wasn't a universal agreement. Also, the Trojans would have broke Zeus's law first by taking Helen of Troy out of someone's home. Polyphemus, the Cyclops, he broke Zeus's law by eating people instead of feeding them. Circe broke Zeus's law by turning people into pigs, tricking them. These people that didn't do anything to her. So we're supposed to overlook all that and just blame it all on Matt Damon as the fall of the Bronze Age. And he literally says that because of the Trojan horse. That's the levels that we took this to in here. And we've left out all of the context. And yes, a lot of the context is based on real history. I would direct you towards Metatron's video where he goes over the history that I approve of as a former history teacher. The way he went over it, thumbs up. This stuff is grounded in reality, and none of this other stuff that they're doing changes it. You're actually culturally appropriating someone else's history in order to further your own agenda. And I gotta say, I think Nerdrotic, Disparu also has great videos on this, some really good takes on this. And I think he and Nerdrotic both gave this like a same mid score. But he's got great takes outlining this in more detail from the writer's mouth and things like that. I'm not going to just keep going on here, but I think Nerdrotic summed it up best when he said, this is basically Christopher Nolan's adaptation here is essentially the atheist adapting a Bible.
If I had to describe Christopher Nolan's Odyssey in one sentence, it plays out like an atheist adapting the Bible.
Nerdrotic.com.
If you had an atheist adapt the Bible, this is what you get. He can't do wonder. He can't do any of these things. He's in a bubble. This is the smallest epic that I have ever seen. It shouldn't have been done all in IMAX. That was a pointless thing. Scylla looked bad. There are a lot of things, and people are like, oh, it's the greatest movie of all time. It's not even the best movie of this year. And that's what I got for you this time. I mean, I just wanted to come back because, oh, well, you predicted this. I actually didn't. I predicted that it would open well because of the pre-sales. I said that I hoped that it didn't, that it failed because I think it sends the wrong message if it succeeds, and that's exactly what's happening here. I warned you about our heroes being deconstructed and about tearing them down and what that does to our history, to our culture, to our heroes and our movies, and that's exactly what you got here. Instead of a cunning, sharp, smart, crafty, strong, cheeky Odysseus, you get a guy who's ridden with guilt and PTSD and self-loathing and hatred and told that he doesn't even really want to go home, which just destroys everything this whole story is about. And that is what I had said, and unfortunately, that's what happened. And if you enjoyed this, like, subscribe. That helps out the channel so much. Hopefully this is my last piece on this. I got a big, awesome essay coming, hopefully tomorrow, and some big stuff this weekend as always, and I appreciate you all being here for it. And if you want to help support the channel a little more, my Patreon is always down there in the link, and you'll get your name on every video, extra members only videos, and so much more, and I really do appreciate it. But until next time, be kind, rewind. Like always, it's Chase with AV Pop Culture, and I'll see you real soon. Bye-bye. I know.